Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sibme Coach Replay Show. We're on the road today. Both Amy and I are in part 3 on this series on the mathematical language routines. If you haven't met Amy yet, she's one of our amazing Sibme virtual coaches from our virtual coaching services team. And in addition to coaching for Sibme, Amy is the founder and executive director of EduOptimists, where she provides professional development primarily in leadership, mathematics, and assessment. And in addition to that, she enjoys spending her free time with her husband, adult children, and dogs. Welcome back, Amy.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here again.
Yeah, we always have fun. And I was just telling my kids the other day that my preschooler, they're learning some initial basic math, and she's not a fan right now.
Oh.
My other two love math, and she was getting a little frustrated, and I say, live on the Coach Replay Show, and I'm not the best at it always. So we had some good math talks in our household this week. So
That's
today
wonderful.
we're talking. We've been breaking down. There's 8 mathematical language routines, and we've been taking a deeper dive into each of them in each of these episodes. So today we're looking at MLR 1, stronger and clearer each time. So if you'll tell us a little bit about what is stronger and clearer each time, and why is that an important mathematical routine, language routine?
Absolutely. First, just a reminder for those that maybe haven't watched the other episodes that the MLRs are meant to support students' math language development. Specifically, right, they were created for our newcomers, ELLs. But what we found is that they are good for all students to help with their language development in math. And so, so stronger and clearer each time is the first mathematical routine on the list. And it is meant to help students strengthen, revise, and refine their ideas, both with their verbal and written output. So this routine provides a purpose for student conversation, as well as a purpose for students to write mathematically. And what we hope to see, right, is that students are pressing each other for details, and that their drafts that they create and refine along the way show evidence of incorporating or addressing new ideas in language, of deepening their mathematical knowledge as they go through that.
Yeah, and I think it's powerful, and it's something that's powerful about all of these math language routines is we're getting students talking about the math. We're getting them thinking out loud and having conversations, which we know that social aspect is where that transfer really begins to happen, and it really kind of starts to be solidified. So I really like this one a lot. Anything else about stronger and clearer each time?
So just that there's really a couple of different ways that you can do it. One of the examples, which we're not going to use today, is convince yourself, convince a friend, convince a skeptic. And so in that one, students create 3 iterations of a mathematical argument. In the first one, they are just justifying or explaining their argument in whatever way makes sense to them. In the second draft, then, or the second version of that, they are explaining what they know, how they know it's true, and working with a peer who is a friend, and that friend is then giving the feedback on some of those components. The third then iteration of that is that students are encouraged to explain why what they know is true, as if they're trying to convince somebody that wouldn't believe them. So somebody acting as a skeptic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And says that, no, that's not right. You have to convince me more. And so really providing those solid details about why that is true. The one that we're going to look at today is often referred to as stronger and clearer each time, but it's actually successive pair shares. And in a classroom, what we would do is we would provide a prompt to students. And then from that prompt, they would take that and write some kind of mathematical explanation, mathematical argument. And then after writing that, you give students about a minute or so to think about what they want to say to their partner, because they're actually going to leave their paper at their desk. Then they go, we put them into partners, and they tell their partner, this is what I think. Their partner then presses them for details, asks them questions, and then they do it again, right? So, well, first of all, they swap places. So if I were your partner, one of us would go first, we would go through the routine, then we would swap positions, and you would maybe tell your side and I would ask questions. Then we switch partners completely and go through the whole routine again. Generally, I like with students to do things 3 times. 3 times kind of seems to get them in that position where they really are talking and getting details out. Once they've done that, then they come back to their paper and refine then their writing and do a second draft of that writing.
That sounds, so it definitely sounds like an opportunity to get students up and moving. In the teacher's hand, maybe while they're doing that, so they can kind of move them through those different successive pairs. That's awesome. So I'm excited to show this in action. I love the video that you use for this. I was telling Amy just before the show, sometimes Corey struggles with math. It's kind of like this golden rule that I shouldn't do math on camera. And when I watched this, I was like, oh my gosh, I could totally do math with those individuals. So they're my kind of people.
So this is a clip from a very old TV show. And I have used it both with students and adults, doing stronger and clearer each time. And what I ask is that after the video is over, that they write a letter to Mom, Pa, Kettle, and explaining their thinking. And I won't tell the rest because then it'll give the video away, right? So we can talk about what they explain after the video.
Okay, absolutely. All right, so here we go. We're gonna watch Ma and Pa Kettle do a little bit of math. Right. I absolutely love that example. It reminds me of my brief stint when I was teaching math, right? So I'd be like, all right, this is going to be pretty simple. And then my students' reasoning, I was like, okay, I see how you think that, but here's where and those types of things. And sometimes it's also how I do my math reasoning. So I love it. It's a great video example. We'll post that in the comments, and also on the Coach Takeaways, we'll have that link to that video if anybody wants to use that. So, okay, so we've watched the clip. We've seen Mom and Pa's math reasoning. So tell us next steps.
Then my next step is I ask the kids or adults, depending on who I'm showing this with and working with, to write a letter to Ma and Pa explaining why 25 divided by 5 is 5. So why is their son right and why are they ultimately wrong, right?
Right. Which that's a hard argument. And they were very adamant.
They were very convincing.
Okay. So to Ma and Pa.
Yes.
Okay. So let's take a look at this.
All right. So in my letter that I drafted to Ma and Pa, I said, "Dear Ma and Pa, I agree with your son. He's correct. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Here's why. If I have 5 circles, and in each circle I put 5 dots, then count the dots. That is 25, because division is the inverse operation of multiplication. 25 divided by 5 is 5. So below I have 25 dots, and I divide or put them into 5 circles. I have 5 in each circle. If 25 divided by 5 was 14, then there would be 14 dots in each circle. But when you put 14 dots in each circle, then you get 70. And you can see my dots, and you can also see all my grammatical errors because I did it very quickly. But I've showed that there's 5 dots in each circle, and then I've skip counted by 5s to show 25. In the classroom, I would, after letting kids write out their reasoning, I would give them about a minute to internalize what they're going to say to their partner. Because remember, a part of this is they're in successive pair shares. They are not taking their paper with them. So I would not have this paper in front of me when I talk to my partner. And we're going to do a little partner talk and show kind of what that might look like. And so I will be the partner that is sharing my work and my thinking. And Corey is going to play the partner that is asking me some clarifying questions, pressing me for details, pressing me to think about maybe some things I haven't thought about yet to help explain this. Okay.
Okay. So let's do it. So do you want me to start with the clarifying questions then?
You can, yeah. So we'll pretend I provided you a summary of this, not an exact reading, and you can start to press me.
Okay, so the first question I'd like to ask you is why did you put 5 dots in each of the circles?
So I knew that their son was talking about 25%, and he wanted to divide that between 5 people. And so what I did was I put the dots one at a time until I got to 25. So I put 1 dot here, 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 and then repeated back through the circles till I got to 25.
So then are the circles the 5 people? Is that why you have 5 circles?
Yep. The 5 circles equals the 5 people. The 5 dots then equals the 5% that he was talking about.
Okay. And why do you have the numbers under the circles?
So the numbers under the circles are to show that each circle is 5. And then below that is where I skip counted.
Okay. All right. I don't know what other questions I would ask. Okay.
So that's all great. But by you asking me those questions, actually, I was thinking to myself, I didn't talk about the fact that those circles represented people. And so to make it clearer, I would need to do that. I also need to talk about the fact that the 5 dots in there is actually, each dot is 1 percentage, like percent, right? And so then 5 equals 5%. And so that would be, I would go back and start to rewrite, hopefully fix some of those grammatical errors I saw too. And then
I do those too, and I have my quick writes.
And then also talk about that percentage, because that's what he's trying to get at. So ultimately, we're talking about sharing a percent, of some money, I assume. I've never I gotta have to say I've never watched the entire show to actually know what they're talking about, but I'm gonna assume they're talking about money, right? So making that clear in my explanation. And you did a great job.
Or something. Yeah.
Right.
So and that's I like how you could then take those questions and then, like you said, add those clarifications of each dot is a percent and there's 5 people. So we're going to draw 5 circles, and then you can get stronger and clearer each time. So
exactly. So afterwards, right, I would go back and I would refine my writing and hopefully have a stronger piece mathematically, thinking this through and helping explain that. Of course, the more I do that, the more myself, right, I begin to understand multiplication.
Yeah. And again, it's that repeated exposure and the repeated opportunities for students of those conversations that I think are what's so powerful about these math language routines. It's no wonder that it works for everyone and not just the individuals it was intended to work for. So
absolutely.
Well, this is a good one. I really like this particular routine. It's a great one, I think, easy one for individuals to kind of get started with, right? You can just thinking about those successive partners, and instead of just a turn and talk, maybe then having them change it up a couple of times can help compound and clarify those thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes you can even challenge. So in this example, we were writing a letter, but I've also seen it done with definitions. And so maybe then the challenge to the student is, okay, now that you've had your successive pair shares, come back and rewrite your definition as one sentence so that it's very clear and very concise, right? So it can be used in a lot of different ways, whether we're talking about mathematical arguments or we're talking about doing some vocabulary development.
That's awesome. Well, this was a great episode. Thanks again for joining us from your hotel today. I'm at my mom's office today. I came in to surprise her for her birthday, and so it was a great chance to get to look at this, and we'll have you back for at least one more. We'll do a part 4. So look for that in the coming weeks. But, audience, tune in next week for another episode of the Sibme Coach Replay Show. And thanks, Amy, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.